What is up, my friends? Myself and David are back, and we're going to take you through the very latest surrounding Liverpool Football Club, with a little view, of course, to the transfer market and the contract situations as well. David, I know you were at the game last night against Bologna. Arne Slot's first as Liverpool manager in the Champions League at home. It's now 8 wins from 9 games for Arne. What's your impression of the Arne Slot era so far?
Yeah, I think a very, very good start. I feel like there's a little negativity at times actually around the start, which has kind of surprised me because I don't know kind of what people expected really. I mean, Liverpool are 100% in the Champions League after a couple of tough games. They've got one defeat in the Premier League, which was disappointing, but can happen. It happened under Jurgen as well. Those sorts of results, despite that, they are top of the league. And having played some really good football as well, and all the sort of underlying statistics show that they also show as well as the results that this is a good football team we're watching. So I'm overwhelmingly positive about it. I think it's been it's a better start than I expected. When you change manager, I think that's so difficult and can disrupt things. And the summer there was so much change there, wasn't there? In terms of you had the internationals going on as well, so that disrupted the pre-season. And for the new managers to come in and you can say what you want about the fixture list, but to hit the ground running in the way he has and to win 8 out of 9, which no Liverpool manager has ever done, that really should be heralded as a phenomenal achievement. And yes, bigger tests to come in the coming weeks, and that other side of the international break looks pretty tasty, and we'll get a better idea after that of where it's up to. But I mean, I really think Liverpool supporters should be extremely excited by what they've seen so far because, like I say, it's as good as any Liverpool manager has ever done. Liverpool just looked really convincing despite that transition. And I personally didn't expect that. I maybe thought there'd be a couple more dodgy results so far, a couple more dodgy performances, but it hasn't been anything like that, really. I think Liverpool have been really, really impressive, and huge credit to Arne Slot for that.
I agree. I think he's come in and he's been sensational. I don't have another word for it. That result against Forest, as you said, it can happen to anybody. Just look at the league table already. Everybody's dropped some silly points. I mean, okay, fair enough. Man City and Arsenal going head to head in a draw. But for me, I think Liverpool fans are a little bit confused, David, because we're used to the kind of heavy metal, high intensity, emotional roller coaster of Jurgen Klopp versus this very calm, composed, articulate, methodical Arne Slot style of football. And I've not in any way found the style of football boring, as there's been some complaints from my fellow Liverpool fans. But what I love about Arne is he's always very quick to reference Jurgen and how good the squad he was inheriting was. I've always appreciated that he is at pains to put that out there and make it very clear that he's had this good start. Yes, there's tougher tests ahead, but he inherited the team in a very good position. And that is quite unusual, David, to get a squad that everybody's happy with. Because normally a manager goes out, it's probably a tumultuous end to his time with the club, fell out with the players, wasn't trusted by the board. Wasn't really the case, was it, with Jurgen?
That's it. He's left really, really strong foundations, and I think that speaks to him as a character in terms of he wasn't selfish in any way in the way he left. He very much wanted to leave it. He wanted to do that final year on the basis that he said himself he could have left the year before that, but he felt he wanted to do another year, get them back in the Champions League, create that young basis with those new midfielders he added in, and really leave a strong squad, and he absolutely did that. But of course, then taking that on and that transition being so seamless is a challenge in itself as well. And I think that speaks to the brilliance of Arne Slot as well. So both elements of that, the outgoing manager and the incoming one, are both impressed in that aspect, I would say. And that speaks volumes about them both.
So I wanted to speak about the midfield unit for a few minutes because it is settled at this point. It's doing its job very well. But it seems to be that some people have a couple of questions about Dominik Szoboszlai. Not so much his work rate or his pressing. I think everybody agrees he's an energetic guy who gives us all out there on the pitch. But I guess it's the end product, David. You've seen even Arne Slot speak previously about wanting a few more numbers from him. How have you viewed Dominik Szoboszlai's start to the campaign?
Yeah, it has been a bit up and down. I do think some of the criticism of him has been a little bit harsh. I think, sometimes people can't see some of the stuff he does off the ball and the gaps that he plugs and his work rate is as good as anybody in that team. He's absolutely relentless, and I think at times maybe that comes at a cost of him being a little bit careless in the final third and a bit sloppy in moments. And I think those are the moments from games that people remember, and that is why they're maybe saying he's playing poorly. And there is no doubt he needs to show improvement on that front. But I think in a couple of games he has. I thought in Milan he was pretty decent. Obviously, he gets his goal with a move that he starts off with a really nice ball, and then yesterday very unlucky not to score. But I thought his general work in the final third was excellent, to be honest. I thought he was, a lot more care that we saw, some really nice flicks that came off and played in teammates. And, if he can bring that side of his game, which we know he's more than capable of, by the way. I mean, we've seen that at his previous clubs and also consistently for Hungary as well, just how good he can be in the final third. Then if he brings that more frequently, which I expect the manager will get out of him, then you're looking at a really, really top-class player. And I already think, he's not far off that. It's as I say, just that those little details he needs to maybe iron out. But I think, overall, there's no question for me that he's been a net positive for the team so far this season, even if there is maybe a little bit more to come from him.
I agree with everything you've said, and I like the balance of this midfield with the three of them. But I do have a concern, David. My concern is the reliance on those three. Curtis Jones can come in and he can certainly replace Dominik Szoboszlai and do a job there. But we are still lacking in numbers for me. Yes, we're unlucky with Harvey Elliott not being available at the minute. But again, you look to that bench and you see with Goro Endo on there, knowing deep down that it's probably going to take a crisis before we see him being played regularly. Do you have any concerns still that we could be a little bit short in that area if the worst came to the worst, be it an injury or suspension or something like that? Just feels like it's a brilliant three, but outside of that, I still feel there's room for improvement.
Yeah, 100%. I'd agree. I think, as you say, I think Curtis should be comfortable with him coming in and covering any of the three, really. Obviously, Harvey Elliott, he's been missed, I think, in terms of he would have played a lot of football in this really busy period, and he's a different player to Szoboszlai, but a perfect replacement, really, in terms of how he fits that role in that kind of number 10 position. He'll be absolutely perfect, and he will play an awful lot of games. But I think, as you say, I think because Endo is not massively fancied by the manager, not really a good fit for what he wants, it just makes you feel that Liverpool are down an option that they need. And obviously Bajcetic is out on loan as well. So again, what you maybe thought Liverpool needed in midfield versus what it is now, that has massively changed, really. So, I agree. I think Liverpool do look short, and I think that is something that they should be looking at going into January, to be honest. I just think there is a need to strengthen there, to give the manager another option who he really does sort of fancy and really would back to come in, because you cannot ride this three. As good as he's been, you cannot ride the entire season through with just those three. You're asking for injuries, exhaustion, the form dropping off a cliff. Those things will happen. So, I would love to see an addition in that position. And my personal view is that Arne Slot probably feels very similarly, to be honest.
Any ideas who that may be? I mean, I'm a big fan of Ederson as an example from Atalanta. He was before the Zubamendi stuff came up, he was the one I was hoping for. Obviously, Koop Miners has gone to Juventus, so I don't really see Atalanta being open to losing another one of their midfielders. Obviously, the Zubamendi conversation's always going to be there. He spoke about not regretting his decision so far. I don't know if he's paying lip service to the fans and the club there, but any ideas on who we might see, and would that be perhaps a move in January or holding off till the summer?
Well, I'd be surprised if it was Ederson, to be honest. Again, over the summer, never really got any encouragement on his name. Don't really think there's anything in that. And I think profile-wise, I mean, I'm not an avid watcher of Italian football, but I have seen a bit of him, obviously, in the Europa League. And I think profile-wise, he's a little bit more of a destroyer, isn't he? I know he gets about the pitch to do it rather than being sort of fixed as a six, but he's more of a destroyer than a playmaker. I think profile-wise, Liverpool will be looking for someone like Zubamendi, someone who, Zubamendi kind of profiled quite similarly to McAllister, really. And I think that is another type they're looking for, really. I mean, Gravenberch is quite similar as well in terms of they do profile similarly. He's maybe more of a dribbler than a passer in the way he progresses the ball, but defensive metrics, the fact he can progress the ball, you've got to be very, very good at both sides of things to play this role for Liverpool under Arne Slot. So I think any of those that you'd see as destroyers, really, you could maybe sort of check off the list. And then it's the kind of question is, okay, can you find someone else who profiles like Alexis McAllister and Zubamendi, or is Zubamendi ever going to sign this contract? And if not, is the legs there? I haven't had that dismissed. been given the opportunities to do that. We'll have to see if anything comes of that, because the whole thing relies on, doesn't it? If he turned around to Liverpool tomorrow and said, okay, in January I've changed my mind, I maybe want to come, I'm sure they'd have a go at that. But you're waiting for that to happen. We're entirely reliant on what the player feels. And Liverpool also can't be sitting there just waiting for that to happen. They'll be looking for alternatives as well. So I think we have a good idea what the profile will be, but in terms of who it actually is, that's hard to say at this moment.
I mean, you mentioned Alexis McAllister there. I've been so blown away by his presence at the club, his leadership, his eye for a pass. He feels like the heartbeat of the midfield that makes everything else work. I think we've stolen him from Brighton, to be honest with you, David, the 38 million quid. I wonder, was he the fulcrum that made Caicedo perhaps look as good as he did in that Brighton midfield? I mean, Connor put this to me the other day, and I've been giving it some thought since, and I'm so grateful that we got him in, because he just does it all, doesn't he? And he does it all with such ease, class, and grace as he just glides around the pitch. I made a bit of a statement. I think he's going to become our Luka Modric. That's the fairest I can be about it.
Well, he's kind of going under the radar at the moment, almost, because Gravenberch's next to him, and he's been such a kind of pleasant surprise, really. You almost, McAllister's not maybe getting enough praise for just how good he's been, and I think he's another one, similarly to Gravenberch, actually. It's quite clear, isn't it, that being in a sitting two is the perfect position for him. It suits him so much better than being the holding midfielder or being one of 2/8s in those kind of tight areas. He's just a player who really thrives being able to win tackles in that area, yes, but not having to cover a huge amount of ground because he can share it with someone else, and then progressing the ball through the lines, constantly getting Liverpool on the front foot. So, and he's got that patience, he's got timing, he can speed things up a little bit when he needs to, but slow them down also. He's just an absolutely marvellous player. And I think, we haven't seen anything, as you say, like anything like the Brighton Caicedo, have we, at Chelsea? So maybe he is missing him alongside him. But yeah, it's absolutely delighted to have him at Liverpool. And your only ever worry about him is, don't want him to play too many minutes, don't want him to get injured, got to wrap him in cotton wool, because he's absolutely vital to this team. And I think signing another midfielder who's similar to him could actually help him in terms of managing his minutes and really looking after him, because he's just too important to lose.
So one of the narratives that we've had in this conversation around the squad is that a lot of these positions so far are settled. We know we have a settled midfield three. We look like we've a settled centre-back pairing, at least a preferred centre-back pairing for Arne Slot. From me reading your piece about Darwin Núñez, and I would urge everybody to go across the Substack and have a read of that if you get a chance, it kind of put an idea in my head. I think it is just that centre-forward position, David, that is probably the only open one in this squad, that Arne Slot is still waiting for a contender to step forward and show him that they want to be the bona fide starter through the middle. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think it is, because I would say about obviously fairly critical of Darwin in that piece, but I would say I wrote after the Wolves game that I thought Jota obviously sets up a goal and then wins a penalty as well. But I actually thought his general all-round play wasn't great, and I thought he was too easily knocked off it. Couldn't help Liverpool get up the pitch, and I think that's been a consistent theme for both of them. The reason you would prefer Jota at this moment, obviously, is because his record in terms of goals and match-winning moments is far, far better than Darwin Núñez, and he is more reliable there. But as you say, I don't think either of them are making I think Jota's making the better case, and he will be the starting centre forward at the moment. But I think, I don't think either of them is absolutely nailed on, and there's no way that Arne Slot will see that he can make any improvement in that position. Absolutely not. I think that's an area where he'll feel that could tweaks be made. Not necessarily in January, but already maybe thinking forward to next summer, and that's a position that could become a priority, because I think Jota could be a really, really hugely useful. He can play all across the front line, and he always scores goals and creates big moments in games. But Darwin Núñez behind him, I think he's getting to the point where we're thinking he's kind of struggling really, and hard to see how it works out for him long term at Liverpool. So there are a few question marks around that centre forward position for me, and actually kind of interesting to see if Chiesa can maybe get a push to get some minutes there, because if he does the job better, if he does the things that Arne Slot likes, and maybe there's an opportunity for him to squeeze into the team there.
Yeah, and that versatility is one of the key reasons, I guess, why we signed him. And he played, I think I'm right in saying, most of his time at Juventus through the centre. I've mentioned many times I've not remembered seeing somebody as excited to sign for Liverpool or as happy as Federico Chiesa. I want to speak about, I guess, going from the sublime to the ridiculous now, David, and moving outside of our team for a while. And two words that Liverpool fans don't really like to hear, and they are Gabby Agbonlahor. I wanted to get your thoughts on his Trust Me Bro source that he's heard Mohamed Salah has agreed to go to Saudi. He'll become the highest paid player, eclipsing Cristiano Ronaldo, and that there's no point basically in Liverpool even trying to negotiate with him. I don't know that anybody else can add any credibility to what Gabby Agbonlahor has had to say. I've not spoken to any other journalists that certainly can back up what Gabby Agbonlahor has said. So I guess the question I would have for you is, David, knowing your sources at the club, do Liverpool still feel that there is an opportunity to speak with Mohamed Salah about a contract extension, or is all hope lost?
Yeah, well, I've got no memory of Gabby Agbonlahor breaking any news around a Saudi transfer, or certainly breaking any news about Mohamed Salah. I wouldn't describe him as the sources close to Mohamed that Rami sort of shot down a few weeks back. So, yeah, I'm not sure about the legitimacy of that story, shall we say. But the one thing, from my understanding, I don't think anything is decided yet. I think for that to have happened, I think, Mohamed Salah would have had to make a decision in terms of what he's doing with his future. And I think he's made clear recently that he would very much like to stay at Liverpool. The big question is, isn't it, how much is the money he's going to be on? What's the contract length going to look like? And they are the big sticking points, and there is potential there for him to ultimately leave on a free at the end of this season. But I absolutely don't get the impression from anyone I've spoken to that a decision's been made. He's signed anything. I'm sure that will run on for a little bit, for a little longer yet, and before we have a definitive answer on it. Because, as I say, I think his preference would be to stay at Liverpool if he can find the conditions to do that. And I think Liverpool would like to extend him as well. But again, it has to be a favourable deal for both sides. I can't imagine Salah wanting to take a pay cut, but equally I can't maybe imagine Liverpool wanting to hand out another 3-year deal at 350 grand for a player who's in his age bracket. So it's a really, really tough one to do, and I've consistently said that. But we haven't had any decision either way yet, and just have to wait till we get any sort of further real concrete update on that, which isn't from Gabby Agbonlahor.
Absolutely not. One of the things that stuck in my mind since we last spoke was about that length of contract for Virgil and Mohamed. When we say an additional 2 years or an additional 3 years, I think, as you pointed out to me, we all forget the remainder of this season, which is still a relatively long period of time. So a 2-year contract extension is basically 3 more years for the players. So I think the smart money would be on the club maybe looking to offer Virgil van Dijk and Mohamed Salah a 2-year extension, maybe the club with an option of a third. I don't know. I don't understand how these things are triggered, if it's club, player, both, or one or the other. But it does feel like Virgil and Mohamed in particular, and I just want to focus on those two for a second, that they are showing no signs of falling off a cliff, to say that. But of course, you have to be mindful, particularly with Mohamed, about the possibility of a Mesut Ozil situation or him sharply falling off. With Virgil, and I've said this to you many times, I think he relies on his reading of the game, his aerial ability, and his quality. So I don't see the fall off from him. Sticking with those two, because we'll move on to Trent in a second. What do you think your gut feeling would be about their futures? Do you think that they will likely, if they can find a way to agree a number with the club, that their desire is to stay at the club, is probably what I should say?
Yeah, so the desire from both, I think they've made clear, is absolutely there, and I do think the Virgil van Dijk one is an easier one to do, as you say, because I just think the position he plays, you can go on a little bit longer. He's playing out of his skin at the moment, isn't he? I mean, that is true of Salah, but he doesn't quite earn that stratospheric level of salary in terms of 350k versus 220k a week. That they are in sort of different areas, really, aren't they? So it's, that is a huge consideration, really, for any extension, because, as I say, neither is going to want to take a pay cut, really. So I feel that the Van Dijk deal is eminently more doable. He's desperate to stay. I think, a 2-year contract, I think Liverpool is still protected there from any sharp drop off. And it just feels to me, and maybe people will disagree with this, but I feel that attackers are more prone to that sudden drop than maybe you'd see from defenders. It doesn't sort of all completely fall apart for defenders in the way that you've seen it with so many different attackers. They just suddenly stop scoring. So that's what Liverpool have got to protect themselves against. And it's, like I say, the money that Salah is on is kind of crazy. You can't pay him for what he's done in the past. You've got to only be wanting to pay him for what he will do in the future. So it's a really, really tough decision, that not one I would like to be involved in making, to be honest. So I can completely understand why it's tricky. But he'd like to see some progress in this next sort of month or 2 months, really, and some real concrete sort of news in terms of which way this is going. Because, for example, if Liverpool can only sign up Van Dijk and he can't sign up Salah, okay, well, he needs to start making preparations to replace him and really having a look at what that ends up looking like. So, they really need to kind of get ahead of that and have those talks and nail down exactly what the player wants and say, look, if we can't get there, this is what we're going to do instead. Those decisions have to be taken pretty soonish. So, would like to kind of hear an update on that soon, but it's all quiet at the moment.
And the one that's probably the most obvious with regard to the future of the player, with regard to the length of contract and stuff, would be Trent. Now, there were chatter, murmurings, whatever you'd like to say, on social media about Liverpool going to offer Trent, not that he's agreed to sign, but are going to offer Trent a 6-year deal in and around 350 grand a week. Have you heard anything on any movement in the Trent Alexander-Arnold negotiations, or any indication that the club are feeling optimistic or anything about his extension?
Yeah, I think there is an optimism there, because I think, there's an acknowledgement that Trent would like to stay if he's recognised with a contract that, like I say, recognises his worth to the club. And, he's spoken previously, he came out, didn't he, the other day in the mix zone and sort of spoke about his future and kind of hinted at the fact that, look, if Liverpool are going to continue winning trophies and challenging, then I absolutely do want to stay. I want to captain the club. So for him to come out, that's a real positive sign, I think. But again, I've not heard anything in terms of concrete progress. Maybe that is something that's slightly leaked from the Liverpool side that suggests that they are starting to put that together. But again, need to move quickly, because you do not want to give Real Madrid the opportunity to put sort of numbers in front of him, or just create any sort of confusion and give him any sort of sales pitch around playing with Jude Bellingham at the Santiago Bernabeu. So that's something that you'd like to think Liverpool would move quickly on that one. It's just clearly the biggest priority out of the three, and I really would like to see Liverpool moving quickly with that one.
We can start off by beating Lille in the Champions League, something that Real Madrid weren't able to do last night, David. So maybe that'll help convince them. So I've just got a couple of quick fire ones for you, if I can, before we finish up. Looking for some injury updates. Our audience are asking about Jadon Danns and Harvey Elliott, maybe when we could expect those guys back into the first team fold, or in Jadon Danns' case, just back training and playing.
Yeah, so Jadon Danns is back running now, but I don't think quite close to full training yet. That does usually take a sort of couple of weeks. I mean, it was put to me that kind of when I wrote a piece about him getting injured back when the transfer window was open, obviously that sort of skewed his idea of going out on loan. But it was put to me that around two months was kind of the talk, really, that was the likelihood he would be out for that. So that kind of tallies with where he's up to now. He's just sort of edging back towards training, and Liverpool's plan isn't necessarily to loan him out straight away as well. The idea is to get him in and around training between now and January, let the manager have a really close look at him because he's a very promising player, and then make a decision on whether he makes the move out and goes for a loan in the second half of the season. So, it's great that he's very close to coming back now, and because he's one of those where, if Liverpool is still in the League Cup when he's back in training, he's available, love to see him get an opportunity, because I think he's got such promise. I really, really like him. So, he's very, very close now to coming back. And as I say, then that'll be the period, then puts himself in front of the manager, and then the decision will be made in terms of where he's up to and what he needs.
And with regards to Harvey, are we expecting maybe
after the
October break?
That was always kind of spoken about as the other side of the international break. Not entirely sure whether that will be immediately or whether it might just edge into another couple of weeks after that. But certainly in this month was the initial expectation I was given.
So unlucky for him as well. He probably would have gotten quite a bit of game time over this period. 3 quick fire names for you. Just they've been in the media this week, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on them. One, a youngster, Chris Rigg from Sunderland, has been written a little bit about in the Echo, and I've seen his name dropped around a few times. Dario Osorio of Midfielder was a story today, and of course Ray and Nuri, maybe with a view to us needing to upgrade that left back position. Anything on those 3 gents?
Yeah, so Chris Rigg 100% will be someone Liverpool are tracking. I mean, I've heard that name kind of from sources relatively recently over the past couple of years, really. I mean, he was so highly rated before he made his breakthrough at Sunderland. Everybody who watched any youth football was aware that this kid was going to be absolutely massive. But obviously, I think he took the right decision, really, to stay at Sunderland, to make his breakthrough there, because he's playing football regularly. He's doing really well, and obviously that's a really good level and a good challenge for him at this stage in his career. So I think maybe a move to Liverpool next summer would possibly be too soon, but I think it's one of those where, they are very obsessed at the moment, aren't they, about sort of getting in, British talent, youngsters who are sort of domestic youngsters. So I've no doubt whatsoever that they're keeping an eye on him, but it will all be about, for him, what's the best move for his career, and would another year in the Championship after this one be better, because he's still so young, isn't he? So yeah, that's one where I would say Liverpool are tracking him, but whether that actually comes to anything, it's kind of, that's one that's massively up in the air at the moment. Osorio, an interesting one, because I think a left-footed right winger, if I'm right, and a few links to those came up over the summer. Again, all feeds into that is a profile of player that Liverpool is certainly looking at, with a view to whatever happens with Mo Salah. But whilst that remains up in the air, again, difficult to say anything concrete really happening on that. If we do get a decision on Salah in the next couple of months, maybe we'll start to see things kind of ramp up around that. And he's a player who's doing well at European level. So no doubt, again, that Liverpool are keeping an eye on him. And Ryan Aït-Nouri, again, known for a long time that he is liked by Liverpool. I think that the big issue in terms of what happens around left-back is maybe Kostas Tsimikas. There's been a chance for him to go over last summer. That was a possibility until quite late in the window. There was some interest there, but obviously didn't actually come to anything. If he were to move on, I think the ideal situation would be to have Robertson, to still have that experienced option in Robertson, but bring in someone who's younger who can challenge him and slowly kind of phase him out. And someone like Aït-Nouri, who I think is a really high quality player, will be perfect for that. But again, I still think it's kind of reliant on Liverpool opening up a little bit of space on that side of the squad. So kind of interesting to see what happens with Tsimikas. Maybe that's is there a mid-season move for him, or is that something that only comes to fruition next summer? We'll have to see. But he's definitely a kind of name to keep an eye on as a player that Liverpool like and would really fit the bill for what they need.
Does he still have the release clause active in his contract out near? I remember seeing 41, 42 million being mentioned as a number anyway.
I'm not entirely sure. I can't say that I've heard anything on that personally, so don't necessarily want to pretend that I have or anything like that. I've never kind of heard that. But if that is the case, then I mean that seems like an easy deal to do, doesn't it? And again, Liverpool got fairly good links to his agent, so that would be, if they did open up that space in the squad, that'd be very, very straightforward for them. And as I say, I think he's a quality player, and I know he's been liked in the past, so that's an interesting one.
David, I always enjoy our chat so much, and I know we didn't get to chat during the week, but it's great to be chatting today. I was watching your match reaction after the game against Bologna, and I just wanted to let people know again that is something that you do over on your YouTube channel after each game, live from the press box, just to make us all very jealous that you're sitting there.
If people want to check those out, privileged enough to be at Anfield for every game in the press box. So and always do those post match, and obviously do them for away games, and I watch those at home as well. So if people want to check them out, they can find my YouTube channel.
Absolutely, and we appreciate your time. I hope you're looking forward to the 12:30 on Saturday. It's at least it's not after the international break, David, I guess will do. I hate them. I'm a late bird, so I hate these early kickoffs.
Yeah, well, Arne Slot's press conference tomorrow is at 10:30 as well, which is an absolute bonus. He started moving them back from 9, so I can't really complain, really. And even with the early kickoffs and the press conferences around 10:30, that's great for me. Gets the work done in the daytime, then you can have the rest of the day to yourself. So I can't complain about those, to be honest.
Well, we always appreciate your time. And again, I would urge everyone to check out David's YouTube channel and, of course, his Substack, where that article on Darwin Núñez is there right now. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching and listening. We'll be back soon. We do appreciate your support here on the channel. Don't forget to let us know your thoughts in the comment section. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.